Okay, so very good afternoon to all of you. So due to some reason, we have started the class of 15 minutes late. That was for some reason. So I hope I am audible to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Fine. So whatever we have discussed in yesterday's class, all the things are clear to you people. Or if you have any doubts, then you can tell me today. So we can have a discussion on that. And if not, then we will continue to the new topic. One question was yesterday, someone asked me about the discussion of variable. That is, let us discuss about the part of global and local variable. What is the scenario? We will discuss about it today. But apart from that, if anyone have any more doubts, they can or have a question in your mind, then you can tell me, right? Or if not, then we are going to start with the topic or discussion from the global and local variable. Okay, fine. So let's start with the discussion of that particular variable. So when in our yesterday's class, we have discussed about this particular part of the variable. So what is the variable? That it is just a particular name assigned by the user or the programmer, means assigned by the programmer actually, that is holding a memory location in our computer memory segment part to store some value. That is the task of a variable. That is in a simple form or simple definition of a variable. We can say that a name, it is just a name that is holding some position into the memory location to store some values for any particular purposes, right? Now, this variable, the data we are storing there, it may be manipulated depending upon the scenario. If needed, we can manipulate it. So this variable, now coming to the part of this variable, what is the scenario that first we will create or declare a variable with a suitable. So initially we just create a variable mentioning its data type. So if it is an integer type data, though we mention int a. If it is float, then float a. If it is char, then char is. So char is. So whatever that is, means mentioning the data type and the variable name. First of all, we need to mention the data type, and then we need to mention that variable name. That is the simple initialization part. It is just a simple initialization part. Now, whenever we are actually creating a variable, so here I am creating, suppose considering this scenario, I am creating a variable int a. Now, whenever I am trying to create a variable, right? So it just hold a position or hold some memory location. So suppose when I created this variable a in a, it is holding a position into the memory location. Suppose the memory location address is 001. It is just assume a concept number. Okay. So a is my variable and that is holding a memory position. That maybe the address of that memory position is 001. And maybe we have put some values into that a position, suppose 10. So this is just a constitution. This is just a scenario of this variable. Means when we declare a variable, how we can do that? How what is the process for the initialization? So when we created a variable if, it was just hold a memory position into our memory, holding some address. We have an address, particular address for that particular variable, and then of any particular value will be assigned there, right? Now, this variable, when we are discussing about this variable, it has actually two parts. One is called a global variable and one is called a local variable. So this is the part that we have missed today. Someone asked me. So global variable and another one is a local variable. What is the concept of this? What is the global variable and what is the local variable? So before going further, before actually discussing about this particular part of global variable, let us write two program, means a short block of program for an example. So let me write it first, then we will have a pretty good discussion on that. So this is one program we have written here. So let us write another program. Fine. So we have written two program here, right? So can anyone tell me, or by looking into this two particular program actually, can anyone tell me what is the basic difference or what difference you can find out into the program one? Suppose this is my program one and this is my program two. So what is
Yes,
the
sir.
difference you can find out? What, okay, so tell me what difference you have achieved here, file.
सर एक में हम लोग सर मेन के ऊपर डेटा टाइप को डिफाइन किए हैं और एक में हम लोग बॉडी के अंदर डेटा टाइप को डिफाइन किए हैं. एक ग्लोबली डिफाइन हुआ है और एक लोकल डिफाइन हुआ है सर.
Okay. So the thing is correct. I think your name is Shubham, right? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Shubham. Fine. So actually the answer is correct. So here looking into the scenario, one thing you can check here that from this part, the brackets, inside the bracket here in the first program, we have write it only the print statement. And in the second program, into the bracket part, we have a initialization and declaration of the variable. And then into the later part, we have just the printf statement. So one part, that one difference, a basic difference, that in the first program we have discussed, or we have initialized or declared our variable beside the block, means apart from the block, into the initially we have declared that, and in the second program we have declared our variable into the block segment, inside the block segment. So this is the scenario for global and local variable. Global variable, it will actually defined outside the block, outside the function, or outside the block of the program. It was initialized in the initial stages. That is just, or that is called a global variable. So it is actually declared outside of all the functions or block. And this a b, whatever we have assigned or declared outside the block, it can be accessed anywhere into the program. We can access this value inside anywhere into the program. And this can be accessed by any type of functions present in the program. And when we are actually declaring any type of global variable, the value can be varied using some different functions. So in the case of global variable, the value of the variable may defined or may be manipulated. So it can be the value time to time, depending upon the scenario, it may be manipulated. And coming to the next part, the second one, where we have actually put the value inside a block, inside a function. So this called a local variable, that is variables are declared inside a function, and these variables can only be accessed within that particular function. So only within this particular section, right, this particular variables can be accessed. Outside this particular section, we cannot access this variable. So whatever the things can be done inside this particular set of scope or set of block here. And the local variable, it actually depends, and the values cannot be changed. The value can only be changed inside this particular function problem. Otherwise we cannot change this particular. So we call it is also a static type of variable. Right. So this is just a basic difference of the global and local variable that we have missed yesterday's topic while discussing about this particular variable. Now, coming to the next scenario. Sir, yeah.
Sir, मेरा मतलब
Payal, your audio is not coming.
हम लोग इसको मतलब
Payal,
ये चीज में बहुत ज्यादा
पायल तुम्हारा ऑडियो सही से नहीं आ रहा है, मुझे कुछ भी सुनाई नहीं दिया, क्या तुम्हारा क्वेश्चन है एक्चुअली? Payal, your audio is not coming and I am unable to hear your question.
Sir, I have a question, sir.
Yeah, Shubham.
सर मेरा रुकिए
Okay, Payal, you continue.
सर ग्लोबल वेरिएबल और लोकल वेरिएबल इसका वेरिएबल का टाइप है या फिर मतलब स्कोप ऑफ वेरिएबल में ये आता है? हमको ये
मुझे सही से तुम्हारा क्वेश्चन सुनाई नहीं दे रहा है, लेकिन जहां तक मुझे लग रहा है, तुम जो सवाल पूछ रहे हो पायल की, whether this global variable has any type of data or any type of particular scope, or whether we can access means this global or local variable is actually depending upon where we are initializing them, where we are declaring them. Depending upon the
यस सर
scenario, we called
Yes.
it global or we called it local variable. There is no difference
Yes.
of data type or anything. If a
Yes, sir,
global
वही
variable, yes, if a global variable have data type of int, float and character, then the local
Okay.
variable also it can int, float and character. It just depends.
Yes,
The
sir.
name is different, the global and local variable, just considering the scenario where
हाँ
we
तो
are
सर बस हम
declaring.
वही समझ नहीं पा रहे थे ना कि ये
हाँ, ओके ओके, तुम्हारा
हाँ
ऑडियो सही से नहीं आ रहा था,
ये
तो दिस इज द
वेरिएबल
सिनेरियो.
टाइप है ये या
No,
स्कोप ऑफ
scope where we are declaring, at which position we are declaring this particular variable. Okay, so Shubham, I think you have a question. So what is your question?
अगर सर ग्लोबल वेरिएबल को स्टैटिक हम लोग ना ले करके यूजर डिफाइन ले सर, तो
Okay.
अगर भाई मतलब ये बॉडी के बाद अगर कोई और क्लास बनाते हैं सर, तो उसमें हम लोग यूजर डिफाइन सर अपना ले सकते हैं सर वैल्यू?
यस, ले सकते हो. एक्चुअली यहाँ पे मैं जो वैल्यू शो कर रहा हूँ, जैसे कि मैंने यहाँ पे A 50 लिख दिया, B 40 लिख दिया, ठीक है ना? So that is just to understand the scenario. But initially, when you are a programmer, when you are actually doing any kind of program, obviously do not take a value, means do not make it a static variable. The variable always should be a dynamic variable where the value will be assigned from the user and it can change depending upon the time and the scenario, right? So to understand as a basic scenario, we are putting some values here to look the scenario. Okay, just a small example here, that suppose I am telling you that write a program for the addition of 3 numbers, right? So what happened here, there can be 2 scenarios. Write a program, when I'm telling that write a program for addition of 3 numbers A, B and C. So suppose I am telling you that there are 3 variables that we need to add. So ABC are my variables. So what we can do, there are 2 options. What is the options? First one, we can actually put the value at the time of declaration, right? Well, means the scenario that we have mentioned here, right? At the time of declaration, A, B and C, we are actually mentioning the value. That is the first option. And second option, what? That we can take the value from the user. We can take the value from the user at the runtime. Now, you people tell me what is the best option, option 1 or option 2?
सर यूजर डिफाइन सर.
User defined, option 2. Why? Because suppose I am user 1, you are user 2, another person is user 3. Now, as user 1, I am trying to add 3 different numbers. You are user 2 trying to add some 3 different numbers. So it can happen. So that's why always try to take the value from the user. So it should be a user defined dynamic type of variable where the value of the variable depending upon the user we can enter. So as a basic, when you are starting, we just try to teach by a static variable, by a static value insert into the variable. But when we have understand the scenario, then we shift to the dynamic part, right? So this is the part of the variables that we need to discuss, and obviously that was left in yesterday's part. Now the scenario is interface, the considering the present or modern day scenario. Previously, when it was the beginning of the era of this coding, computers, all the things, it doesn't look so simple, right? Previously, at the if we go back to the initial stages when the computer was developed, when this coding was actually developed, we have a black terminal screen. We have to write something from the command line argument where one user can get a time or have a time sharing based concept there, where one user can sit and work for its purpose. Then when it is done, then the person who can get a chance or something like this. This is a command line argument particular section. We are talking about the command line interface. So this is the interaction from the command line. Now, when the scenario is getting developed day by day, the scenario is getting upgraded, then the concept of GUI, that is the graphical user interface, comes into the scenario. And this graphical user interface, what is the advantage of it? That this graphical user interface is actually giving us a easier view for the particular what we are seeing, and we can understand that what we need to do next, right? So scenario, if I tell an example here, so have any of you have the idea of Linux? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Linux. Considering the concept of this Linux, where we are doing all the things from a terminal section, right?
Yes, sir.
We need to write whatever the command, whatever the things we need to write. We are doing that from the particular section of terminal. This is a particular Linux session. Now, if anyone have the idea of the networking operating system, in a network operating system or a server where we need to deal with the main whole scenario of this network, there is nothing like a particular what we can see, just a black terminal screen where we need to write all the things. So that is a difficult part. But when we are shifting to the Windows or any particular software, any particular application or a web page we are viewing, so what we can understand by looking a web page, that there it is a login button, means we need to log in by clicking there. This is a logout section. We need to click that logout to log out from the particular session. So that GUI, the graphical user interface, is actually giving us a more appropriate view and a simpler view that what we need to do next, what we can do, how it can be done. So a very easier scenario we can talk about. So this interface components, it is helping here to the screen. We can look into the screen, and our obviously mouse and keyboards are there to help us to go through the processes. Right. So that is the shift of the GUI, and this GUI is helping for this particular section to grow or to run any type of thing. Now this Java, talking about the consideration of this oops under the part of Java. So Java actually have two types, or actually have set of some GUI components, right? So what are the two particular type of the scenario? One is called AWT, right? So if we talk about the GUI of this Java, a minute. So GUI of the Java part. So there are two segment actually. First one, we can talk about that AWT. The full form of AWT. Anyone knows that? Anyone? The full form of AWT is Abstract Windowing Toolkit. The full form of AWT is Abstract Windowing Toolkit. Okay. And second part, in the part of this, there is another thing, swing, right? The first one is AWT and second one is known as swing. So what is the scenario of this AWT and swing? So abstract windowing kit or AWT is a particular GUI mode that is helping us for the particular scenario, and swing is also having a particular GUI section and event that is generated, right? Suppose when we are actually clicking any button through our mouse into the web pages, right? Suppose you have on a particular web pages of Flipkart, and into the section you can click through the mouse on different part or through your mobiles by touching on that particular item. So that is an event occurring, or that is an event is happening. Why I'm telling it is an event? Because to the computer it is an event, it is a session. Because when you are actually trying to click any item, suppose a product you are clicking, so that is an event is occurring. By clicking on that particular item, the computer is understanding that this event needs to be happened. So depending upon that, whatever you have clicked there, the event is going to occur, right? So this are the two separate part of GUI, the AWT and this swing. We will discuss more about it coming into the scenario. There is a segment of this AWT and swing, the basic parts where we are discussing. Just I'm giving the overview. So when you are actually trying to click something through our mouse, so obviously it's an event is occurring, and then particular for event a particular message is going to be displayed into the window, right? So when you are trying to suppose log in, you are clicking in the Flipkart section, sorry, not the Flipkart, in Facebook you are trying to click the login part. So when you have touched or click that login event, a new window or new tab is opening, or new GUI section is opening, where you need to write your ID and the password, right? So this happens. So this is the event, and as per every event there is a message that goes to display into your Windows section, into your computer, actually into the monitor. So this Java GUI object-oriented programming, and related to that, one more extra topic or one more thing that is added with it, that is known as the network. A prime scenario is there is network, because nowadays for every minute, for every second, till the time we are awake or not doing any other stuff, if we are having a mobile, if we are having a laptop, the time when we have a mobile, we have a laptop, we are connected to the internet, because today now it is an era of the network. We cannot step aside, or we cannot make us differentiated without a network. We cannot imagine a life without a network, right? It is, we are habituated, and now thanks to this COVID situation, where it has become a daily, minute to day or minutes part in our life, the network or the internet is playing a huge role. So this internet having different section, different classes will be there for internet. So we are not going to talk much on the internet today, but just a basic overview to deal with the internet. There is some terms that is related to here, that is the IP, termed as internet protocol. The bandwidth is an important part here in the part of IP, the packets, the IP addresses, domain names. These are the scenarios with servers. Now, why I'm talking about this network into the concept of object-oriented programming or Java? Because this Java is helpful in many ways. That is, if you're trying to design a web page, right? When we are trying to read the HTML or web page section, this Java is a very helpful thing, or Java JDBC, Java.database connected, this type of scenario that is helping for the web servers also, right? So Java plays an important role or a huge role into each and every section of in our daily life. Now, coming to the basis, now we are entering to the part of this programming, Java programming, and the part of this coding. Now, as a basic level, when you are starting, we need to learn the types that we have already discussed, the variables, the structures, what are the scenarios, the instruction set. So the program, in a very small part, or in a very shorter term, we called it a program, but as a CSE department student, we called it a coding. Program refers here as a part of coding, because programming means we are doing such type of coding. Maybe it can be any type of languages, but we are doing some coding here. So some step-by-step process is followed here. So the basic, if we talk about a basic Java application, a program, what is the program? I have told you people. So if I ask you that what is the program, so what will be your answer? What is the program? Anyone?
Set of instructions.
Set of instruction. Fine. So if we talked about a program is a set of instruction or a sequence of instruction. Moreover, not a set of instruction, sequence of instruction. Why I'm telling sequence rather than set, right? You have told me that set of instruction, but I am telling okay, you have told me set of instruction, but I am telling here sequence of instruction. Why the sequence of instruction instead of set of instruction? Because a set of instruction means we can write any type of instruction, so that is called a set of instruction. We have write, suppose initially we have write printf ABC, then we are writing int AB, then we are writing hash loop dot. So whether it will be meaning anything, whether it will help, or whether the program will be actually execute anything, right? So the scenario is that we need to follow a sequence. What is the sequence? First we need to mention some header file, then we need to mention some main functions, then we need to put some variable declaration. So there is a sequence we need to follow while writing some particular code. So that's why I am telling you, don't write anywhere the set of instruction, right? Do not write anywhere this, wait a minute, set of instruction. It is not a correct word actually. The correct word is sequence of instruction. This is a program called actually. So this instruction or the sequence of instruction needs to be there, and that is actually meaning something. When the compiler will compile that, it will execute or read line by line, then it will have a meaning and it will compile all the scenario. So there are some rules that will be determined, which is allowed or called as syntax of the languages. There are some syntaxes, obviously. Syntaxes mean when we are writing, suppose hash include stdio.h, void main int abc, we need to write it in this particular proper format. We cannot change it because it was defined, or that way when the software, when this programming concept was designed, it was initially designed like it. So that's why we need to follow this some basic syntaxes of the particular program. We need to follow this syntaxes of this particular program. So this program can be we can say as a semantics value is there, and the computer, as when we're trying to compile this particular thing, particular this set of instruction, the aspect of this programming are sometimes referred here as a pragmatic. So these are the terms. No, it's nothing to be much discussed about here. So when we are actually trying to explore the Java, when we are actually getting into the scenario of Java with any kind of problem. So suppose I'm trying to write a program, hello world. So initially when we try to discuss the C program, when in your college of diploma, when you started to discuss about the C program, the first program or the first example you have heard about, that is hello world. Write a message to display a hello world. So similarly, if we're trying to put something or trying to write something through Java, that is a hello world that displays a message of hello world. So there are some way or process needs to be followed. So what are the basic process? First, we need to write some program text into the computer, some sequence of instruction we need to write. Then we need to compile the particular program. And if the compilation of the particular program is successful, then we have an output, right? So these are the basic steps. First, we need to write a program, compile the particular program, and if the compilation is done successfully, there is no error, then we can have an output into our scenario. So what can be the particular, if I write a simple Java program to display a hello world, right? So what it can be, how it looks like. So let me write a simple Java program for you people to display a hello world message. Okay, so what is the program or how we can write it? First of all, public, a class we need to be defined, or object, class, these are the sections. This is the important part of Java. So first we need to write a public class hello world, right? Public. So here we are mentioning a class that is known as hello world. So we are trying to mentioning a class that is known as hello world. So a class have been mentioned, that is public class. Actually, class there are two types, public and private class. So we are mentioning the class as a public. So public class hello world. Then after that, public static void main. So here a function we are trying to be discussing. Then some particular. So these are the syntaxes. It was initially developed when this Java particular scenario was developed. These are the syntaxes, and we need to follow it. We cannot change it, right? So we need to follow this particular scenario, right? So public static void main string args. Now in the next part, suppose we are trying to print, what we are trying to do, we're trying to do a display of message of hello world. We are trying to display a message of hello world, right? So what? So writing that particular system.out.println, system.out.println. So here with the particular scenario, system.out.println, now displaying the message. What we are trying to print? What we are trying to print here, that is hello world. So we are trying to print this particular message as hello world. Now after that, the semicolon section, how many brackets are open? There are 2 brackets are open. We need to close that 2 brackets. So this is a simple particular message. Now the scenario is, by only this single line, by only this single line, the work is done. System.out.println, by only this particular line, the hello world can be printed. But in Java or in C, what are the means our basic programming structure? We need to write this public class hello world, public static void main. So these are the things that was the syntax is defined. So when we, any type of Java program can be written, we need to mention this particular 2 things. The class, name of the class will be there. So here the name of the class is hello world. We have mentioned the name of the class as hello world, and then this particular public static void main, this string us. These are the syntaxes that we need to follow or that needs to be written. Like C, we need to follow the header file #stdio.h. Then in the particular section, we need to mention some main file. Then the message what we need to display. So in C and Java, this type of programming, we need to initial stages and we need to write some syntaxes. But if we just move to the part of the Python, right? Or considering the most recent trending topic, the Python is most used heavily. So by a single line, print hello world. This is a single statement by which we can display a hello world message. So a single line for single printf statement. So that is the transformation of the coding from the C Java to the Python. So now you can tell me that whether the Python don't have any header file in C and Java when we are mentioning a header file. So how the Python is managing? So the Python is actually have a rich header files. So the header files, or when we are actually trying to write this print, if we write this print, at the time of compilation, the Python compiler will automatically execute that what this print means, and this print was written into the header file. So Python have a rich number of header files included here into the Python section, into the Python language actually. So the
सर
yeah,
सर आप यहाँ पे एक्सेस फाइल यूज किए पब्लिक, अगर हम लोग कोई भी यूज नहीं करते तो बाय डिफॉल्ट ये क्या ले लेगा?
पब्लिकली जाएगा.
सर एसएस स्पेसिफायर का जो यूज किया सर, अगर नहीं यूज करते हैं तो सर सर मैं क्लास जो डिफाइन किया सर उसमें सर
कैन यू रिपीट योर क्वेश्चन?
सर जैसे आप लिखे ना पब्लिक क्लास हेलो वर्ल्ड, जो क्लास आप क्रिएट किए हैं सर, उसमें अगर सर पब्लिक ना लिखे जो कि एक्सेस स्पेसिफायर है सर, तो क्या वो सर गलत होगा या सही होगा सर?
देखो एक्चुअली हमें ये जो क्लास है पब्लिक और प्राइवेट, बेसिकली 2 टाइप्स ऑफ क्लास होते हैं ना, पब्लिक और प्राइवेट क्लास. So by default, if you are not mentioning, so class will by default it will access to a public class. So if we are not mentioning here, I have mentioned this public, right? So I am mentioning that it is a public class. But if we are not mentioning, suppose you are not mentioning this public, you are trying to write class hello world. So by default, it will goes for the publicly, because when we are trying to make any private class at that particular time, we need to mention it private. But if we are not mentioning, it will by default go to the public class. Now the thing is, a class must have a public or private, which we need to mention the access specifier for that. So if we are not mentioning, maybe depending upon some compiler, depending upon some software, it may be done or it may not be done. Just a simple scenario I am talking about here. Suppose in C, what software you people have used for C programming?
Sir, Java JDK, sir.
For C programming, the basic of any C
sir,
programming?
Turbo, sir. Turbo, sir.
Turbo. Any other platform anyone have used?
Sir, Dev भी किए हैं, sir. Dev.
VS Code, sir.
Okay, so
block code, sir.
okay. So coming to the part of Turbo C and Dev C++, have you people found any kind of difference that yes, this cannot, this is very easy in Dev C, Dev C++, but in Turbo C there are much more problems if we're not mentioning that. Then there are coming some errors. But while in Dev C++, we don't need to mention those particular things. Have you find out these particular differences?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So that is the
Yes,
difference
sir.
of what type of software we are using, what type of programming application we are using. Depending upon that, maybe if we're trying, if we're writing that thing correctly, but depending upon the application, maybe it gives an error. So first, it is not a wrong, or I would say that there is no wrong if you don't mention any public thing. But if we're not mentioning, it will go by default to a public class. It will go by default to a public class, right? So the thing is, for a simple hello world message, we need to write at least 3 lines here for Java. So the call we are using here, system.out.println. This command, we are calling it in the part of Java, which is known as the subroutine call statement. It is known as a subroutine call statement, or it is as using in a built-in subroutine. It is called as built-in subroutine. Okay, so one more thing, that as the time is going to end, means only few seconds are left. So for your attendance, kindly write your names in the chat box. I didn't see the time here. The link will be disconnected at any time. So if the link disconnected, then you can think that the class has ended, because as the time is over. So I would like you all to write your names in the chat box so no one can miss his or her attendance, right? So while discussing, we are discussing something. So the time maybe gets over. So nothing to worry on that. We are going to start again from that particular section into our next classes. And if you people have any doubts in your minds, then you can ask me into my next classes. So we can have a discussion and we can sort it out, right? So every questions, if anyone has